time I write the basics of the song, but when I cannot bring it further, then we all add the parts, and Art changed some guitar parts, Yves writes own bass lines, Simone writes a lot of own vocal lines, Koen he arranged all the choir, so everybody has his big contribution, and together we bring the whole thing to a higher level.
Process of recording. Well, we start out with drum recordings. After the drum recordings, we started with guitar, which took a lot longer than the drums. The drums were finished in a week and a half. Guitars took really long. We recorded
2 months. 2 months.
2 months. I recorded 4 guitar tracks instead of 2 this time, so it took me a lot longer. Then we recorded the bass, which Yves did at home, and vocals were done in the studio again. In between of the guitar recordings, we just switched back and forth, and yeah, in the end, the choir recordings and the arrangements,
orchestration.
Orchestrations, and yeah, that basically is it. So it took us 4 months, maybe.
A lot more.
Beginning of March.
I think we started in the beginning of November with the drums, and the last orchestrations were finished in May,
orchestration
in
also
May or
took
something.
long. Yeah.
Orchestrations took a lot of time.
Yeah, like 2 months as well.
So it took us more than half a year.
Yeah.
1.5 years, yeah.
Can be done much faster.
And that's just the recording process, that's not the mastering and mixing?
No.
And
also not the writing process.
It took another year.
Right.
Yeah, well, another challenge was him. He only knew, well, we wanted him to record the album, but in a month before the recording process he was still on tour. So when he came back we had about 3 days to prepare him for the recordings. But he has a very good memory. He only has to hear one time. We were lucky with him. He didn't know what to drum before he entered the studio, more or less. Because we prepare the drums on MIDI with the drum computer. And of course there has to be, it's not alive. The drummer has to bring the drum tracks alive. And so he did all that in a very short amount of time. So we were really lucky to have him.
Yeah, he really put the album to a higher level.
Good job.
He's such a nice guy to work
What
with.
can I say? But mostly it was just fun to do that kind of stuff, because like even Odd say, it's the basic tracks were already written and arranged, and all I had to do was just add my ideas to it and just experiment a lot in the studio, and we could do everything every bit by bit, step of the way. So
still we did it in 1 take.
Tried to keep the costs a little bit down by recording at home, and well, that was a challenge because it was for me the first time, and it went a little bit like I asked the producer what he needed, and he needed like a clean track and a distortion track, so 2 tracks for the bass, and so I bought the equipment for my studio, and then I recorded a test track, test recording. Sent it to the producer in MP3. He said, well, yeah, it's decent, it's good enough quality, and so I could do the whole album just at home. That was for me a challenge, but in the end it was more relaxed because you can start whenever you want, you can do as many takes as you want, and it doesn't cost any money.
That's what I tried with guitar recordings as well, but since we didn't have that much time to experiment with it, just decided, okay, I'm gonna do the recordings myself, but into the studio, or in the studio, so to save the costs of an engineer and producer. So it did save some money on it, but it took me longer since I couldn't record any more than 5 or 6 hours a day.
Okay.
But the main challenge is to
record a better album than the previous one.
Yeah.
Now we worked with the choir for all 3 of our CDs, and it was really nice. It's the same choir. It's almost the same choir as the first 2 albums, and yeah, you got used to the people to work with, so it was really easy this time. We had a lot more choir parts than previous albums, but I think the working process was that good that it got really fast on tape. So
3 days?
3 days.
In 3 days.
I think, except for one song, every song on the album has choirs in it. It was a lot of this big pile of paper with choir parts, so it was really a challenge, but it worked out fine.
And you wrote the parts?
Yeah, I arranged the choir parts, yes.